it's Ina the Mood Reader and welcome to another video. Finally, I was able to film a video. I'm not that busy anymore. I have time and my mental health is a little better. So yeah. Today we'll be talking about the books I read last April. Last April, I gave myself a challenge to read arcs, like Arc April challenge. I know that used to be a thing. I don't know if it's still a thing anymore. Please let me know in the comments below. But yeah, I did it alone. I did it for myself and I actually was able to read a lot of arcs. If I'm not mistaken, I was able to read 10 and we will see today. I tried to put a counter here somewhere so that we can verify how many books, how many arcs I was able to read in April. Right now, honestly, because of how busy I was in the past few months, I felt like April was months ago already and May is almost over. So I really have to get this out there because, you know, I love my wrap-ups, mainly for me, but I hope some people also enjoy watching these. But I've been rambling for a minute now, so let's get on to the books. So to make it easier for me, and since I've also talked about some of these books already, I'll start with my recent reads and go back up to the start of April. So yeah, the last book I read for April was The Project by Courtney Summers. And I remember when I was like squeezing my way back into the book community last 2018, the first book I ever read was Sadie. And Sadie was like the bomb. I listened to it on audiobook. It was like an introduction for me on audiobooks and full cast audio. The beauty of listening to a book, like going back to the old school narration storytelling type. I was sold. I was captivated by audiobooks, and until now, you know how much I love my audiobooks. And yeah, because of it, I am very excited to read more of Courtney Summers' works. I haven't, you know, really explored that arena, but having an arc from Wednesday Books on The Project, I was really excited about it, but I was disappointed. I don't know. The Project is a thriller, I mean more of a mystery, and it revolved around the concept of sisters, and one sister trying to save her sister from this cult. So I haven't read much about, I haven't read many books surrounding cults, but me and my mom, we love watching documentaries, especially on Netflix, about them. There's something really interestingly creepy about them, and it's, you know, a unique culture, the way they captivate people and all that. But I didn't know why. I'm not sure if it was the mood that I was in at the moment, or I kind of felt like the book was all over the place, that I didn't like it. I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. I don't know. I didn't feel any like connection or sympathy towards the characters. I have to admit, most of the time I felt lost on where I'm at, like which timeline I was in, because this book was told in different years and the years are actually quite close to each other, like 2017 to 2018 and all that. So the time I was like closely together, that it was I was a mess while I was reading it. I got lost somewhere in the book, and that made the delivery of the story not satisfactory for me in a way. So I'm still gonna read other works of Courtney Summers. I still love her a lot. I still like her work, but I don't know, something about The Project didn't like hit it, didn't like got me. So I think I rated it 3 stars, right? Yeah. And the next book I read was You've Reached Sam by Dustin Thao. I remember Mark, from who I know from Talk Bookish to Me, posted it that this book was available to read now on NetGalley, and I immediately rushed in to read this book because look at that cover, it's so beautiful. And it's an Asian read, so I was really excited about it. The vibes were very Japanese, and I have to admit that that is a hit or miss for me. I don't know if I'm just very like simple-minded, I'm just very basic, or I'm just very literal, but I really have a hard time connecting to Japanese movies or series. I'm not like following anime and all that. Maybe I'm just a boring person, or I haven't really discovered the best parts yet. I remember telling my friends that it wasn't really hitting the right notes for me, like seeing all of them screaming about the book, loving the book, and crying about it, and I was numb at it all. It took a while for me to fall in love with the book, and then a friend, Nay, told me to imagine that while I was reading the book, I was watching a Japanese, I forgot the term that she used, but I think it's a Japanese romance anime. And when I put myself in that perspective, I was able to manage my expectations, and I liked the book. So, I mean, in reality, the book really touched on something special with the concept of grief and like a magical realism thing where you have the chance to talk to somebody who meant a lot to you and was gone in an instant, and someone who actually you planned your future with, somebody who you couldn't imagine living life without. So that's really interesting for me. And I mean, the way the author discussed the plots of this book were very interesting, were amazing. I guess it just took me a while to fall in love with the characters and the book. Again, I think it was just the mood that day that wasn't working, and I was in a better mood the following day, which made me like the book a little better. So this review is very subjective, so please take my thoughts with a grain of salt. So yeah, many or most of my friends have read this, really loved and raved about this book, so maybe it would also be a favorite for you. Please do watch out and try to pre-order the book. It's a very good story. It just took me some time to fall in love with it. So yeah, the next book is 100 Days of Sunlight. This is an arc that I had on my shelf since last year. It's by I think she's also a YouTuber on the book on the writing booktube, author YouTube something, Abbie Emmons. And this book is tells the story of a girl who got into an accident and she became temporarily blind. There is a hope for her to see again after 100 days. She's a famous blogger poet, or like social media poet, Instagram poet, I don't know. But yeah, so for that particular period of time, she won't be able to blog or write her poetry because she is temporarily blind. And her carers decided to post an ad in a newspaper to hire somebody who would help her, who would temporarily be her eyes, to, you know, help her get around and work on her poetry for her. At the last minute, they pulled out on the advertisement because she found out about it, I think. And then the son of the owner of the newspaper was able to grab a copy of the ad, and he decided to want to try out for the job himself. And here's the thing, our male lead character had an accident and he can't walk. So he, in a way, they both have disabilities. And the thing is, he always felt like people pity him as an adventurous guy who got a leg amputation. So he thought that having someone who couldn't see the disability that he has would be a refreshing feeling. And he also, in a way, it also was a way for them to connect with each other, because they felt similar things because of the unfortunate incidents they were able to go through. So yeah, this book was really interesting. You already know that most probably they would fall in love with each other, and most probably something would happen when one of them finds out the real deal about it all. So yeah, it's very predictable in a sense, but I still enjoyed many parts of the book, like trying to get our female character out of her shell and try to be hopeful, and all of that. Yeah, overall, I enjoyed parts of the book, especially at the start of it. I had some troubles when I was like in the end part of it, where we finally learned about the backstory of our lead character. There's something that didn't felt right about how he lost his leg, how he dealt with what happened after. And I think it wasn't like a good story to tell for like a representation for an amputee. So yeah, and also the main character was a little infuriating. It's a lot infuriating, so I guess those were just simple things. But this book is very quotable. There's a lot of quotable quotes in there. It's a feel-good story, but yeah, it could use a little polishing, but still I enjoyed reading the book. The next book that I read is a new favorite of mine. I really enjoyed this book, and it's Amelia Unabridged by Schumacher. So this book is about a girl. It started with a girl and her best friend. She felt like this best friend, picked her up, saved her, and like helped her survive life. She was having trouble in many things, and they just met in like a very serendipitous way, and they became sisters. Maybe not by blood, but the bond that they had. And she was like basically adopted with this girl's family, and they both love books. So this book is about it's like a love letter to books in a way, since our main character is a bookworm, and there are many things about reading, the love of books that are scattered all throughout this book. But the main deal is that they are fans of a very specific series. Think maybe Harry Potter or Shadow and Bone, the Grishaverse, or something like that. They're really strong fans of like maybe Percy Jackson-ish type of book written by a very established, successful young author. And they, like, I think as a graduation gift, they have to go to a convention to explore, to meet him and have their book signed. So basically, her friend got the chance to meet the guy while she was in the comfort room. So they missed the chance, and they fought about it. And eventually, they have to spend summer apart. I think it's the first time that they would be spending summer apart. And fast forward to like, this was actually spoiled in the blurb, by the way, in the synopsis. So I'm not spoiling anyone. Her best friend died. So yeah. So her best friend died, and everything is over for her. The book revolved around her grief of losing like her partner in life, where they planned everything together. They were supposed to go to college together. They literally planned their entire lives together. So our main character was left like lost and confused and unsure of how she would like to proceed with her life. And then one day, a first edition copy of the book came in, and she knew in her heart that it was her best friend who did this for her. And to answer all her questions, she wanted to go to the bookstore where her best friend was able to buy the book and like retrace the story from there. So it is important to note that in this book, we have a romance. So this is actually more of a romance and also a side subplot of dealing with grief. She actually meets her author. I know this is like the fantasy of many readers. Basically, she meets this author and both of them are dealing with a particular kind of grief. So it is very hurt comfort. They found comfort in each other. They also had an insta-lovey-ish experience that didn't really matter to me. I loved the way it flowed, and I love the way their relationship progressed. I love the writing style of this author. This is actually really a very, very, very strong candidate for my favorite book of the year. So yeah. The next arc I read was The Last Secret You'll Ever Keep, another Wednesday Books release, and this one was by Laurie Stolarz. And I already read a copy of her other book, Jane Anonymous, and this is actually a companion novel to that. The story started in Jane Anonymous, where a girl who was a victim of an abduction signs up at the Jane Anonymous platform to like find comfort in other people who went through the same thing as her. And this book revolved around her feeling like it's going to happen again, and also like what's next after a trauma, what happens when you try to get back to your normal life. There was a spotlight on how people don't really tend to believe the victims. They second guess the victims. They get impatient on how they are handling their trauma. And that happens not only with strangers but with families. People you expect that would hold your hand all throughout would actually end up getting frustrated by you. So that's something that you could expect in this book. It's very heavy. I think in a way Jane Anonymous was written better compared to this one, but it still delivered a very good story where you can get a lot of lessons. And I guess a warning would be that there's a lot of trigger warnings in the book. So I think it's not for everyone. Really proceed with caution before you jump into reading this book, especially since it tackles abuse, like physical abuse, graphic descriptions of violence, and abduction and all of that. There's so many things you have to prepare for before you read this book. If you're not on a stable mental health state, especially with dealing with trauma, I suggest to skip this book altogether. So yeah. The next arc I read was The Hate Project by Kris Ripper. And this book I read as a part of a blog tour with Karina Press. And The Hate Project is actually the second book in the Love Study series. This time we have a grumpy pairing. And it was really exciting for me because I haven't really read much about that. Normally we see grumpy sunshine pairings, but not grumpy pairings. So it's really cute. They're like frenemies to lovers. And by the way, this is an romance. So yeah. And then our main character is plus sized as well, and he has a lot of body image issues. He has anxiety. There are a lot of mental health discussions on this book. So yeah, I think the author did a good job of touching on all of those sensitive issues and really give the reader a glimpse on how he processes his life and how it affected him, being open to love, being open to opportunities, being open to like good things happening to him. And I really love the romance part of this book, but what really makes this book shine is the friendship dynamic in it. I mean, they really have great and loving friends who would stick up for them anytime, and it's the same friend group in the first book, The Love Study. So I suggest you also grab that one if you have plans on reading this one. But all in all, it's a really fun book, really exciting, and I love, you know, it was very hard to stop turning the pages with the way that the writing style of this book really felt like having a conversation with a friend. So yeah. Next, the next books I read were as a part of the Film with Readathon, and I already talked about these books there on that video, so I'll just be linking the video below or here somewhere, and I'll just pass through them quickly. So first I read He's a Brute and She's a Spitfire by Chloe Liese. It's a part of a trilogy, I think, and I've only read the 2 books because I only had arcs for the 2 books. And yeah, it's a romance book, contemporary romance. We have mafia, sports, women in STEM, enemies to lovers, or like dislike to lovers, and all of that. It's very hot, very steamy. There's a lot of drama too. So yeah, it's an adventure. And Chloe Liese is actually a great writer. I am so excited to read more of her work because this one was really enjoyable for me. The other book is Perfect on Paper by Sophie Gonzales, one of the best young adult books that were released this year. I really loved it. I think this book was, or the author was quite controversial on Twitter a few days back. People were like doubting her bisexualness because she is, you know, how people really judge bisexuals by being straight passing since they are in a heteronormative relationship. People like judge their queerness, and it's something that actually is touched on the book. I don't know if the thing they were questioning was her or the book, was the author or the book, but yeah, I just saw it randomly on my feed. But okay, so this book talks about what it means for a bisexual teen to come to terms with her sexuality. You know, this book, we have a character who writes love advice for people. She is in love with her female best friend, and she also meets this guy who asks help from her to win back his ex, but sparks fly again between the two of them as well. So this book touches on many things that young adults should learn, and I'm really passionate about my love for this book. I think this book was written amazingly. Perfect on Paper is really good because it shows you that, you know, what might look perfect on paper might not be the one for you, and you know, there's no way to dictate what love is like because love is different for every situation. But this book touched on, you know, relationships when you're in high school, consent, sexual identity, gender identity, your sexuality, other like parts of the spectrum, and a whole lot of things. So you must read it. Yeah, I would just like to end it with that. You must read this. And okay, so the last arc I read for April was I Must Belong Somewhere, which is a poetry collection by Dawn Lanuza. I've read a lot of her works before, her poetry and the novels she wrote. Yeah, so this one is very personal to her. It touched on a lot of things that happened on her life, like in her romance, in her family, in her deep desires, and the traumatic things that happened to her. So basically, there were parts of it that I liked, and there were parts that were a miss for me. But all in all, I think it's still a good book and worth the read. And the part that didn't resonate with me might be parts that you would absolutely love. So please try and grab a copy of it. Let's support our local authors. So those are all the arcs I read for April. So most of them are really recent releases, and I've just I just realized that I really have to review all of these books on my NetGalley. So let me just go ahead and do that. Which of these books sounds amazing to you? Please let me know in the comments. What types of videos do you want me to do and all of that. By the way, this serves as like the first part of my April wrap-up. I have other books, just a few more books to feature, and of course my reading stats, and those will be coming up in the next few days. So I hope you watch that as well. Please reach out on my socials, and I'll see you next time. Bye!